Welcome to the AWP University, a construction industry institute, registered education provider.
All right, hello. Welcome to this version of the AWP University webinar series. Today, we're going to be covering a topic, the future is smart. It's going to be a very interesting discussion. We're joined today by Mr. Geoff Ryan, founder and CEO of AWP Insight, and we'll do a further introduction for Mr. Ryan here very shortly. For myself, let me introduce myself. I am Robin Mickelson. I am the president of the AWP University. I've been involved now with AWP pretty much since inception, and before that, having helped with the development and research around it, as well as implementing it now on over 150 different projects. At the university, we are a direct-to-consumer as well as corporate training supplier, and very happy to be hosting this webinar series where we talk with those that are most influential in the industry regarding AWP. So let's get going with a little bit of housekeeping here today. All right, so we are going to use Slido for the webinar here today. Slido, I'm sure most of you have used in the past through a conference or other. It's a great information gathering tool. It's also an amazing tool for gathering questions. As the mics are not going to be live from our participants during the session, the best way for us to gather questions is for you to utilize Slido. There are some basic questions on Slido, but please either scan the QR code or go directly to the website and input the code and ask all your questions of Geoff or myself on the application, and we will get to those at the end of the session. So Geoff's going to present to us for a little while, then we're going to answer questions before the end of the session. So your questions will be answered, and please post them to the app so that we can see them and go through them with Geoff at the end. All right, so to get you started, let's go to the next slide. And if you're in the system, please take a moment to answer the question for us quickly, just so that we have a good cross-section of who it is that we have with us today in our session. Looks like, all right, good. We've got a few people answering. That's great. So we got some people signing in and online. All right. So while you are answering those questions, I am going to introduce Mr. Geoff Ryan. And let me reactivate the poll so you can continue to answer that poll. Mr. Geoff Ryan. So Geoff is, as mentioned, the founder and CEO of Insight AWP. I've known Geoff now going on probably 20 years or so. Geoff and I have worked together in multiple capacities, and there he is sharing his camera now. And I'm very pleased to have him here to discuss some of the data problems of today's industry and how he's come up with some solutions to handle that. Geoff is considered one of the founding fathers of AWP and the methodologies around it. And through his company, he consults with the industry's largest and best companies. So Geoff, please take it away. I will hand over the reins to you from here, and Geoff will take us through his presentation here today. Thank you very much, Geoff.
Well, thank you very much, Robin. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you well. Thank you, sir.
Very good. All right. Hey, thanks to everybody for taking a bit of time out of your day. I guess our support for that is that we'll give you something to take away today. Hopefully, you can learn something today that you can use in your day-to-day activities. I'm going to switch. I will switch to my screen. I think. Okay, I think you can see that now. Good, perfect.
You're
okay,
so
okay. I'm just going to kick off with quick safety topic, which is good practice for everybody. You guys all do this. When I'm talking about advanced work packaging or workplace planning or any of the stuff that we do, one of the most simple forms of a safety presentation is that what we're trying to do is to standardize and normalize and get rid of the chaos of projects. When we do that, of course, we get a lot of work done. But the extended benefit of that, of course, is it's a very safe site to work. If you look at any safety program, you look at the structure of it, it basically says, have a plan, stick to the plan. If you deviate from the plan, go back to the drawing board. Because they recognize that having a plan, sticking to the plan, is a very safe environment. So while we're talking about advanced work packaging, workplace planning, focusing on productivity and other benefits, one of the fringe benefits is it's very safe, and you guys know that firsthand. So anyway, that said, what I'd like to do is to just introduce the subject. So we're going to talk about the value of data, and we're going to talk about how you can make use of that. And we're going to get started on that by, I'm just going to show you this video, a quick little video here. You guys may have seen this, but I'd like to play it for you.
So Geoff, as in practice, the narration's not coming through the audio. So if you want to narrate it as it goes through, that'd be great.
Sure can. So essentially, what the video is showing us, this is an iPad screen that the foreman is holding. And you can see that he's moving the transparency button down the right, and he sees the model appear in place. So basically, augmenting the reality of where the packages are going to be built, overlaying it with the actual geographic location of the components. You can see that here, obviously they're showing where the pipe will go. Here's a demonstration of how we can use that with installation work packages. So on the right-hand side is a series of IWPs that we've created. You click on it and it appears. So in this case, the green one is week 1, the purple one is week 2, the blue pipe is week 3, the yellow pipe is week 4, and then of course the pink pipe is week 5. So basically, simulating the 4D simulation of the pipe and the packages. However, of course, it's also presenting it in space. I know there's lots of controversy about exactly what 5D is, but if you look it up if you Google it, which is our go-to guide for what's right and what's wrong, it will tell you that the 5th dimension is space. So essentially, that's what this is doing. Now, this is real. We're using this on projects. We build packages, put them onto iPads, give it to the foreman, and the foreman use those augmented reality to plan their work. Now, you can see, looking at this picture, you could try to figure out, is this better to stick build in place or to lie down and build and then stand up? You could have all sorts of great conversations about that. Now, I just say that to say this is sort of the end game. However, getting here gives you a whole range of other benefits. So that's really what we're going to talk about today. The actual augmenting the reality of IWPs is the easy stuff at the end of this. What we're going to do is to talk about how we get there. So I'll introduce myself. I know Robin gave me a quick introduction. A former Canadian from Australia. I'm now a Texan. Well, I'm still working on the accent. And have been at this for about 30 years, which is just about the same length of time that Robin's been at it. Actually, we did meet each other way back, maybe 99, I think, maybe 2000. So anyway, very similar story to Robin's. Been working this, pounding this pavement for many years now. Lots of projects. I own and operate inside AWP. We work for a range of owners around the world. We've got about 30 employees working on 12 projects right now. So that's us. And what we're doing here today is basically describing how we do business with the knowledge that that you can do this. We don't have any great secrets. This is not rocket science. But I want to explain how we respect data and how we manage it and how you could do that as well. So I want to talk a little bit about big data and about how data is becoming a commodity and a very valuable commodity. I read an article in the New York Times some time ago saying that data was the new oil, because data is actually more prized than a lot of the traditional commodities. I'll give you a simple example of that. You know, if you have a piece of steel on a project, but you don't know you've got it, that piece of steel is of no value to you. Now, I know that before now, the logic was if you've got it, you should know you've got it. Well, everybody on this call knows that that's not true. So the data that tells us what we've got and where we've got it and where it is and what we can use it for and where it came from and how it fits into the big picture, that's way more valuable than the actual piece of steel. Right? So when I say that data is a commodity, it really is. And I guess going down this path of advanced work packaging and workforce planning, we woke up to this the reality that data is very, very important. So anyway, I don't know if you guys have had a chance to play with ChatGPT, but I'm going to go there for a moment. So I went into ChatGPT this morning and I said, why is data important to AWP? And this is the answer that spat out verbatim. I haven't changed anything here. I hit a couple of highlights just to show, you know, that essentially I think of ChatGPT as sort of like Siri on steroids. It sort of goes out and finds data, pulls it in, and makes a cohesive answer for you, which is really good. But anyway, you know, according to the data that is on the web and that is accessible, these are all the highlights of why data is important to AWP. So it enables efficient project planning, accurate and timely data helps us budget and manage budgets and schedules, enables a real-time monitoring and control of the project. But here at the bottom it is the key point, and that is that when we have data in the right format presented to the right people at the right time, it enables informed decisions, and that is so critical. Because ultimately, anybody on the project, anybody on the call that has been on a project where they struggle to understand what's reality and what's not knows that you spend a lot of time trying to figure out what's real and what's not. And of course, we can get beyond that. Of course, we can get to the point where we only have a single form of data and that everybody's using the same data and everybody has the same answers. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. What I'd like to do is to present this a little bit like we're heading towards our own model of AWP ChatGPT. You know, that sometime in the future, we want to be able to ask our data these tough questions. You know, like how much will I save by using AWP? What's the best format of using AWP? What's the ideal size of packages? How many workers should there be per workforce planner? All of those questions that we all have opinions on and we all struggle with, we've also all had experience with. You know, that once we get that data into a format like the internet has gleaned this data from, we could basically start to zero in on the ideal model for advanced work packaging. And of course, you know, one of the problems that we have in the industry right now is that everybody on this call understands AWP and the value of it, but the rest of the world doesn't. And the rest of the world is still kicking the tires on this thing. They're not too sure whether they should try it or not. A lot of people out there thinking, you know, the second mouse gets the cheese, we'll let everybody else try it first and then we'll go there when it's safe. Well, you know that we need this data to prove that point. Now, there's been a couple of runs at doing this, and I know, you know, there's the last 20 years, I guess, or maybe more than that, people have understood that we needed standardized data. Look at ISO 15926, CFOS, very similar initiatives where we try to standardize data so that we could have, we could build up data formats and we could get to this pool of common data. So we always struggled with that, and you know, I know that there are softwares out there that are compliant with that stuff, but getting consistent data from vendors and fabricators, from engineers, is basically almost impossible. So what we've taken to doing is to set a set of data standards for a project. We have a standard set of data standards, get as much data formatted like that as possible, and then deal with the rest of it. and it works. You can make it work. So trying to change the whole world, or if you like, solve world hunger, is not working. But you know what? We can do it, one person at a time. We can change, and we can do that, or we can do it one project at a time. We can organize the data for that project. So that's essentially our philosophy going forward, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. This is how you can make one project work, and of course, at the end of the project, end up with a pool of data that is going to lead us to this place, which is basically a smart future. When you have questions, here's a QR code that you can use. So you'll see that in the bottom right corner here, they've got our logo, our new logo with the Future is Smart, but also the QR code is there. So any slide we're on, you can scan that QR code and post a question. And I would encourage you to not wait till the end. Just post questions as you come to them, as they appear, and we can stick around at the end and answer them. Get my mouse working here. Okay, I love this slide. That simple, but it's a great way to think of data. That top pile of Lego blocks, that's where we live today. When somebody says you've got all the information, well, that's what they're saying. They're saying, I put it over there, and I dropped a bucket full of information on your step. You figure it out. Well, of course, data in that format, which is like hard copy PDFs and or drawings that have multiple drawings for one file, or basically Excel spreadsheets that don't make sense. That's what that is. That's that pile of raw data. Yes, the information's in there somewhere, but you have to pay somebody a lot of money to try to ferret that data out. Well, that's not really a usable format. As you go down to the next level, the standardized data or the organized data, that's really where we want to get to. We want to get this stuff organized into piles so that we can make it make sense of it. And of course, that is basically just formatting or implementing standardized rules. Sometimes, of course, that could be standardized naming structure, standardized formatting, just getting digital data. Now, once we get that, of course, then we can warehouse it and we can organize it. So now we can bucket it away to where it needs to be, and we're going to talk about the data warehouse here in a moment. But beyond that, then we can use a tool like Power BI or Tableau, and we can pull data and basically see how big those piles are, and start to understand what we expected and what we've got. But it really catapults into usefulness when we use it the correct way, and that's the one of the real keys to what we're doing, and the folks on this call understand, and that is, this is not about data storage and data management. If that was the case, we'd just go to Oracle, we'd buy a database and we'd throw everything in there. But we need to know how we're going to use that data. And that's what AWP is. AWP gives us what we're going to do with this data model. And that's really important, because that comes right back into how do we store it, how do we sort it, what data do we need, what do we call it, what's the naming conventions. So having the end in mind is really important here. So we are going to build IWPs, we are going to build a house out of this Lego. And we know that we're going to need to organize the data in that format. So that's really important or a component of how do we store data. So let's get into the meat of exactly how we do that. So we think of, we have a model called the data warehouse, and my data guys have chastised me for calling it a data warehouse, because it's not really a data warehouse. You could call it all sorts of other things, but you know what? That makes sense in my mind. I picture a big warehouse, a truck pulls up, full of data, driver gets out, guy comes over with a clipboard, he checks off to see what you ordered and what you've got, unloads it, puts it in the warehouse and stores it. That's essentially what we do in a data warehouse. And we do that across multiple databases and multiple formats, but essentially that's the way we think of data. We have data publishers, people who produce data, and of course a lot of these producers or publishers, that's all they do. Right? They don't actually give us anything else. They just give us data. So when we think about data as a commodity, we have to, because that's what these guys, that's what we pay for. That's what these guys give us. So we have data publishers and we have data consumers. So people who need data and people who make data. Now the problem has always been the gap between these two guys, or these two users. How do we make data consumable so that the end users can use it? Well, you know that a lot of people on this call already know that answer. You pull it into all sorts of different models. You know, the model for augmented reality that we showed at the start of the presentation, that's a consumable format, because the foreman can look at that and he can understand, okay, I've got the steel, this is what I can do with it, this is what it says in the schedule, okay, I can understand that. So that is a consumable format. So the way we do that, or the way we get there, of course, is we start talking about data warehousing. So we start with, as standardized as possible. So we've got AWP requirements, which is, hey, we want it linked to CWPs. Our world, the CWP is the center of the universe. We want to schedule delivery, so we want to treat it like a commodity and have it delivered. We've got standard formats that we want it delivered in, and we want a project nomenclature that is based on the work breakdown structure. So we can read a name on something and understand, okay, it goes in this area, belongs to this CWP, this discipline, here's where it is in the schedule. So some pretty standard stuff there that you guys probably know, but you gotta have those rules. Now, one thing I should point out is, one of our learnings along the road is we can't leave this to the data publishers, right? Because the data publishers don't completely understand what the data consumers want. And of course, they will do things that are in their best interest, which they should do. So, that when we're on projects and the owner is basically leaving the publishers to do what they do best, well, they do it best and they do it for themselves best. They don't do it for anybody else. So the model that works best for us is when the owner steps up and, we call it being the adult in the room. We've got two teenagers here, the publishers and the consumers, and somebody needs to tell them to play nice. And that's essentially the owner's job here, is to be that project management organization and to understand that we need to condition data so that it can be consumed. I use that example because I've had the teenagers and I know how, how that struggle works. Okay, so we're going to host this data somewhere. So that means that we need somewhere that's secure, somewhere that people can get easy access to. So one of the other problems we have with data, of course, is people getting to it. Right? Getting to the data is a real struggle on lots of projects. Because we have the mothership, which is the owner's server. We really don't want other people in there. Well, the problem is we need other people in there because we need these consumers to get data. So the stopgap, or the transition, if you like, between publishers and consumers is ideally some other platform. So we typically use Azure Cloud. Super safe, all sorts of security, redundancy, whatever you want to do. They will give you as much security as you feel comfortable with. Dirt cheap to buy, basically, in the grand scheme of things. All we do there is we use SQL databases that are placed on the Azure cloud, or we use software with their own databases. The key is you have one platform where everything can communicate with each other. And the other important piece of information here is that we have a gatekeeper. That's the guy with the clipboard, comes out to the truck, checks to see that the data is good. Basically checking and making sure that data is good. Of course, the ETL is the I can't remember the transition as transform and load. Extract, transform, and load, maybe that's what it is, yes. But anyway, the data engineer is basically checking that data and formatting it so that it fits into the right structure inside the warehouse. So we use the SQL database to do that. Again, you can buy that stuff off the shelf. and whichever databases you want to use probably works. What we do up here is we put in all of the other standardized software. So whatever document management system you've got, if we can post it in here so that we can get access to it, that's what we're looking for. Same thing with material management, workforce planning software, completion software, and the project schedule. These are the core elements of the data that we consume. There's other ones. There's quality management, of course, safety management. They can go up here as well. But ideally, we want to build a host environment that has all of this, that is all named and stored in the same place, so that it can talk to each other, so we can draw on each other. Now, the other thing, of course, that does is that allows us to mine that data and build reports from it. So ideally, of course, if we have all of this data structured in the one place and we go to a tool like Power BI and we say, okay, I want to know the current status of this or that, essentially it's like a sort of a mini chat GPT where we're mining all the data on our site and saying, hey, tell me what material I've got, what I don't have, what's early, what's late, how much progress have I made, how many people have I got on site today, how many hours did I burn. Basically ask any question, and all of that data is going to be somewhere here on this platform. So basically you can decide what do you need to know to understand a project, and you can mine that data. So that's what these guys do, because these guys are big data consumers. They are using data all day, every day for all sorts of different things, for construction, of course, building work packages, understanding how we're making progress against the schedule. Of course, quality control use it to say, we've got this done, but we haven't got this done. We need this documentation. The warehouse, of course, what have we got? What don't we have? How are we issuing it? Workforce planners building packages, and of course everybody using Power BI reports. Now when we get this going, and obviously we've got security in place and we manage privileges, the Power BI reports are basically on your phone, right? So you can get Power BI on your phone and you can decide what dashboard you want to look at, and when you press press the button that says, hey, I want to report on this, it pulls live data from this environment. So as long as your publishers are putting data in there at the right as it becomes available, then when you pull a report from this environment, it is live data, and it is the same common data that everybody else is looking at, and that's really important. So we're all on the same page. Now, often enough, of course, there is inconsistencies with that data, and people come back and they say, this can't be right, this data doesn't match that data. Well, that's really good too, because that means that we are then scrutinizing the data that's up there and fixing it. So then we go back to the publishers and say, hey, you know what, this doesn't look right, do you want to recheck it? And they go ahead and make the changes. So anyway, so a really healthy environment for everybody to be looking at the same data. Power BI really brings that to life. Okay, last one here, just on this is the sort of infrastructure that you need in order to get to that first little video that we looked at, augmented reality. And I know that my guys are listening to this online now and they're saying, way oversimplified. Well, it is, but that's essentially what this is. It is an organized approach to managing data like it's a commodity so that we can consume it. And of course, that starts with the publishers, explaining to them that their data is a deliverable and that it needs to be delivered on a schedule in a format that we can use, and we're going to scrutinize it, and if it's not right, we're going to send it back, and we're going to keep working those issues until we get the right data. And then of course that's going to tell the guys on site what they can do, what they can't do, and the current state of things. And then we can take that data and build installation work packages and pull that into augmented reality. And one of the really cool things that we're doing in augmented reality, I thought, was you can actually go to a junction box in augmented reality and pull up the current status of that junction box. So it will tell you what's terminated, what's not, what's tested, what's not. So And you can do that from an iPad, because the iPad recognizes which junction box it's looking at, goes into the warehouse and pulls the current status for that junction box, and you see a list of what's connected, what's not, and of course the status. Super cool when you are finishing up project systems for turnover. Really cool for commissioning, startup, of course. Great tool. There's no reason why we don't do that. You know, the airline industry have been doing that for years. They basically have QR codes on things. You go over there, scan the QR code, tells you the history of things. That'll be the next thing for us, is that we'll have QR codes on things, and you will be able to scan that QR code and get the installation manual, all the drawings, the complete history on the object, replacement parts, you know, whatever you want to put in there. Basically, you can send people to a website that will tell them all about that component, whatever that is. That is within our grasp. We're going to learn to walk before we run, but I think that will be a future state for sure. So, quick look at a Power BI report. You know, you make this up, you decide what you want to see. Here we've got a couple of examples of, on the left, we've got all sorts of different conditions about our IWPs and what spools have been packaged and how many are complete, and you decide what that looks like. You know that one of the ways that we were doing this on projects is we would have lunch and learns. So put on pizza on a Wednesday, have everybody into a room that wanted to come by, and we would just demonstrate one little function of Power BI. And then we go back the next week, we demonstrate a different function. One of the great things about the data warehouse is that it monitors and tracks every single transaction. So one of the great things out of that is that you can see who's making use of that data and who's not. Of course, people typically are not using that data because they don't know how to, or they don't know how to get access, or they don't understand the value of it. But either way, that gives you a focus for any training or support that you have to provide, because you can zoom in on those people and help them understand how to make use of that. This picture on the right is just a plot plan, and essentially what we're doing there is just color coding it to say orange is good, yellow is we need to be aware of. So it's helping us to understand what we should be focused on. But thousands of different variations of Power BI reports. What you can do with it, I think we're just scratching the surface with Power BI and how we mine data. Okay, so you know, graciously, the AWP University gave us this time slot to present our position on data management, so that we could tell you guys about the Technology Summit, which is coming up in San Diego next week. We've got some Insight guys going there. They're going to present this live, and then they're going to stick around. They're going to talk ad nauseum to anybody that wants to talk about anything to do with data. We're there for 2 days. There's a bunch of our guys that know way more about this than I do, and they're going to talk to everybody with the intent that this is simple. The logic is simple enough. The tools are simple enough. You can do this. If you decide to go down this path of managing data like a commodity, that you can do this. So this presentation today, certainly the presentations here at the Technology Summit, are meant to help you understand that. So anyway, great. I'm really looking forward to this summit. The people that go there, great place to exchange ideas and to talk to other people that have very similar interests. Okay, just one more thing. If you want to know more about the subject, I actually wrote a couple of books on it, and you can buy those books from Amazon. I was joking with Robin at the start of this that he said you can buy it for $4, but I think that's the signed copy. The unsigned copies are worth a lot more than that. They're $25. But either way, you can buy that from any distributor online. You can go to our website. You can download our procedures. There's a whole bunch of other stuff there that you can learn about AWP. One of the great tools that you can use going forward, because of course you guys on this call get asked every day, what is AWP? Well, a very simple answer is go to YouTube. There is a bunch of short videos on YouTube, and in the space of half an hour you can be caught up to the basic philosophy of AWP, but also a lot of the a lot of the language that is used around AWP. Okay, and Robin, I'm finished a couple of minutes early, so I know that we had a little bit of time for questions at the end of this, but that's really the end of the talk today. So would you like to?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Geoff, for that. And I think that's a great ad on the back about using YouTube to identify. There are a lot of really good short videos out there in the 5 to 7 minute range. We at the university actually have just launched a brand new one that's out on YouTube. It's a 6-minute video on what is AWP. We also have a free 1-hour course online. As soon as you go to our website, it's a free course. You can go, it gives you a little bit more, the executive briefing, which is exactly that. Use it internally. If you're trying to sell AWP up the food chain, some of these YouTube videos, some of these other things are excellent tools to do that. But what we're gonna do now is, Geoff, if you wanna give me back the share, we will jump over and we're gonna jump into questions. So you probably want to bring your camera back up, Geoff, because you're not done. We're going to put you on the hot seat now. All right. So you're seeing my screen, Geoff? Everything's good there?
I am. I can see the questions.
All right. Let's get you on the hot seat. Let's see what people have been asking during the presentation. All right. So we have a few questions that have popped up here. And for these questions, just as a little bit of housekeeping, those of you that have asked questions or agree with some of the questions that are being asked here, you can always go and vote for the questions. You notice the thumbs up on the right-hand side here. That helps to bring those questions to the top of the list, meaning they will get to be answered, possibly. We've got quite a few questions here. I think there's 10 or 15 questions that are in the queue right now. The odds of us getting to all of them aren't very good, but if you vote for them, the chance of that question coming to the top to be answered is that much better. So please feel free to go in and vote to change some of the questions that are there. So what we'll do is we will get started, and I'll ask the first question of Geoff, as it's got the most votes. We're at 4 here votes for this. So how do we get assistance to set up these systems? Do you have to consult? Is it a product we can buy? Do you sell the architecture? Walk us through basically what you just showed us, and how does a consumer get started with that, Geoff?
Okay, so there are a bunch of consultants in the industry that do this because there is a market for it. I know that our business model is that we teach people to do this, and basically with the intent that they're going to do it and we're going to leave. And I know that that is a common practice. So that's essentially consulting. So yes, we do that, but there's a series of other consultants out there in the market that can also do that. We don't sell the architecture; we basically we give it away. So that's the basically what we just talked about here was the idea that we need a little bit of help to get those databases to link, but essentially the overall understanding of a platform and SQL databases and conditioning data is something that with a little bit of help you can figure out.
All right, excellent, Geoff. So our next question, don't you think AI will replace many jobs and projects? Example, the path of construction will be produced in a moment once all the info has been input. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, that would be nice, wouldn't it? It's just to have a standard path of construction, like a GPS in a vehicle. Okay, this is the right way to build this. Yes. Well, you know that maybe that is beyond my sight at the moment, but maybe that's on our horizon. I know I did talk in the introduction about the difference between machine learning and AI. You know that what we talked about today was essentially machine learning, and that is we get enough data that we can just boil it down and say, okay, this is what the data tells us. AI, of course, is that next step of saying, okay, now based on this data, we should make these decisions. And I don't think anybody is actually there yet. But why not? You know, why not get enough data that we understand that that's exactly how we should do that? That's a long way in the future, and of course, the path to that will be get this data, standardize our formats so that we can show what's the right way to do things.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, Geoff, and thank you. I would add to that just a little bit, and that is that I'm a member of RT 391, which is a research team within CII that is actually focusing on AI in construction. We've had this conversation off to the side, and it's funny how it mirrors conversations had, say, in the 70s with the automotive industry and robots coming in. But the funny thing is this isn't robots building our projects. 3D printing of our sites is a whole other topic. We're not covering that here today. That is a tradesman replacement type tool. But when we're talking about, say, AI building a path of construction, we're not that far from it. And actually within the research team, at least from a machine learning point of view, true AI, I use that term lightly because true AI doesn't really exist yet. It's machine learning at this point and being able to make some educated decisions. So with that, I would liken that more to the computer age and the oncoming where we thought computers were going to replace everybody. Does anybody feel replaced by their computer? I think more people feel that they're heavily chained to their computer, and because of the computer age, a lot more is expected of us individually than being replaced. So when it comes to creating a path of construction instantly, the truth is we may do that, but it's got to be monitored, it's got to be vetted, it's got to be changed, it's got to be maintained. And it'll be some time before we're at that level of AI interaction, I think. So great question. Thanks, Preston. That's the Preston that Geoff and I know. Thank you. It's good to see you, friend. And we'll go to the next question. All right. How do we correlate between IWPs and hydrotest packages in piping? Once we start taking IWPs and hydrotest package, start talking IWPs and hydrotest packages, the field guys get lost. More of a direct AWP question for you. Flex that AWP muscle, Geoff.
Okay, so we think of IWPs and hydrotests as two separate work fronts. Now, of course, what you can do in a 3D environment, you can monitor the progress that bulk construction is making against system construction. You know, when we move to hydrotest packages, we're essentially moving, that's the first step into system completion. Yes, we build IWPs based on bulk construction. You do all the welds in this one area, then you move to that area and so on. You don't really care what system it's in. When we move to hydrotest, of course, we have to do the whole system. So monitoring that completion in a 3D environment tells you how far you've got to go. And of course, once you are complete enough across the whole project, then you can start to finish systems and build hydrotest packages. But they are two different packages. And essentially, when we move from IWPs into hydrotests, we forget the IWPs and we move into a brand new package, which is, okay, here's this hydrotest, all the work that hasn't been done. This is the work we have to do, how many hours we have to do it in. Here's all the parts that we'll need to get it done. And it becomes its own package. And that way, of course, you're sort of separating bulk construction and system completion. Hopefully that makes sense.
It does, and I think it leads into our next question, which is how to integrate IWPs with SWPs for the commissioning phase. And I think from a hydrotest point of view, the hydrotest packages have a lot in common. In fact, they're often governed by the basis of an SWP, which is the system package. So these two questions are kind of hand in hand. Which is, you know, how do we integrate and how do we correlate the IWPs against them? Current research says that SWP is really that. It'll help you as far as the prioritization of the IWPs into the hydrotest package and those testing packages that are being created, because one test package may take several IWPs to complete. Priorities for those are set by the SWPs. Geoff, you agree? Is there further on the SWP integration into IWPs and hydro you want to add there?
No, that's basically it. Except that we do transition from one to the other, so we don't think about a series of IWPs that will make this SWP work. We just get into the business of system work packages. One of the other things, of course, that we're discovering with system work packages and the management of progress in a 3D environment is, we used to have a rule that said, okay, we get the 75% complete across the project, we're going to switch to systems, and then from there on, everybody works systems. And of course, systems is a really real drag on productivity because you are basically just doing a little bit of work on a long line. and it takes a lot of setup. You are far better off to do bulk construction for as long as you can. But one of the things that managing data in an environment like a 3D environment, which is what we're talking about, is that it allows you to do that one system at a time. So you don't have to draw a line in the sand and say 75% we're switching to systems. You can just do the systems that you want to get turned over, and you can focus on those. So it actually improves the productivity for the rest of the project while you are focusing on the systems that you need first. So again, that understanding the big picture of data and understanding what we need to focus on is basically enabling decision making for the people in the field and improving productivity doing that.
Excellent, thank you, and thank you, Mark, for the question. So, general question: what role does AI play in the AWP future? Do you think?
Huge role. Well, we'll call AI machine learning, same thing. Huge question. So one of the things I wanted to say was, we do tool time studies, and we've been doing them for 20 years. We've put all of this data on a public website, which is www.timeontools. You can go there and you can search that, and you can basically say, I want to see what's their direct activity level for projects in North America with packaging and without packaging. So you can see the difference between that. Or I want to see Europe compared to North America compared to Asia. So we've got that data up there. So that's sort of if you like, an introduction to the sort of questions that we will be able to ask when we get this data organized and in a usable, accessible format. So that's a quick learning, just the sort of way we can slice and dice data and make comparisons. When we get to the point where we've got enough data that we can actually do this project, or we've got a series of projects, like the benchmarking activities that came before us for CI and COAA, we will have the ability to basically machine learn. That is to understand that in these conditions we get these results, and of course that will help us make decisions. Now, of course, as you witnessed when we looked at the augmented reality as well, it also has a usefulness here and now for the project, and that is it presents, if you like, information in a format that allows people to make decisions. So huge future. That we used to worry that the foreman didn't know how to use iPads. Well, guess what? Now they do. Now they do it all day, every day, and they only get dumbed down when we bring them to work and we give them a piece of paper. They'd much prefer to work off an iPad. And if you don't believe that, go into the field and ask those guys what they do in the evenings. They're basically surfing the web. So that's not our problem anymore.
Right. Excellent. Thank you, Geoff. All right. Next question. Do either of you have experience working with labeling services companies for pipe markers, valve tags, equipment identification, and signage? Do you plan for this? Interesting question. What say you?
So we have some experience in that when we deal with these guys, basically we tell them what we want the tag to say. So we will tell them that we want a barcode and we want this number under it. This number has to relate to this number on the PO. Basically, sort of setting out what that needs to be. Now, but also, of course, some basics, which is if you're sandblasting or painting or anything like that, the tag has to survive that, of course, and of course be put on in a couple of different places so that we can find it. There's some basic rules around tagging that you can develop. So yes, there is a little bit of experience there, and of course we've been in situations where we had to actually make the tags and put them on components when they arrived at site, which is very poor practice. But that's sort of a stopgap if we can't get tags put on at the vendor.
Yeah, that's a big question, a big area to cover, everywhere from Lamicoids to RFID tagging and smart intelligent tags with full temperature and vitals readings. That's a large aspect to cover, and maybe a topic for a future webinar.
Yeah.
Thanks, Max. All right, so What's your take on new technologies such as Chat GDP removing jobs from the construction industry? Another one of those along the replacement by tech, which is a viable concern. So what do you think, Geoff?
So today in the US, we have 11 million job vacancies. We have about 6 million people unemployed. So we have 2 jobs for every person unemployed. Our problem is not losing jobs. Our problem is people. You know, there's a big push to move manufacturing back to the US. Well, we're going to need people to do that. We're going to need people, or we're going to need automation. So same thing in construction. You know, that everybody in this industry is going to suffer from not having enough people in the next 10 years. And it's going to be one of the big resources that we fight over. So removing jobs from the construction industry is the only way we're going to get stuff built. Yeah, I think the question is the exact opposite.
I think that's an excellent answer, Geoff, and I think that leads to how do we entice those to join the construction industry, because we're scrambling to automate, as you're saying, to fill the gaps. Skilled tradespeople, it's still a taboo thing going to a trade school rather than a tech school, you know, and going to university rather than to a trade school. How do we sell construction as a viable future for young people starting out? I'm not sure technology replacement's the fear. It's the fear of not having enough technology to replace the empty positions, as you put it. There are going to be some jobs that are going to change because of AI and technology, but replacement and people in the unemployment line, I'm not sure that's at this point a hill to die on, just because we're just not there yet. We need to replace the tradespeople that we don't have, if you will, right now. All right. So
I have a little opinion on that I'll share with you guys, and you guys can maybe chew on it a little bit. I think it's about respect. You know, that we don't show construction folks enough respect. And you want proof of that? Walk into any lunchroom. You know, those guys make a good living. They live in big houses. They live in clean environments. And then we give them lunchrooms with dirt floors. You know, who's going to go to college, get a college degree, and then come to work in construction because they can make a good living when they have to eat in a dirt floor? So, and you know that we went through this transition in other markets where we basically had to start treating construction workers with basic respect. And I think that is somewhere we have to go. That will at least not, you know, stop people leaving the ranks, if not attracting them.
right, and I think that's a very good point, Geoff. You know, both of us coming from a trade background and stuff. You know, the respect. When did that start? When you started having CM around your name, and I think that's a very clear distinction. Thank you, Geoff. All right. Interesting question. Can you tell me more about work packaging tools such as Smart Plant as an example, or for construction, which is currently the best on the market? So Geoff, what do you think the best automation tool out there is?
Okay, just get ready to hang myself here. Yeah. Well, you know what I tell people is what we just described with the data warehouse will make any software work. All of those softwares that you've seen on the market don't work if you don't feed them data. And they do work when you feed them data. You know, so that's the problem is not, or the question should not be the software. They all work. The question is, do you have the data to feed it? Is it clean enough? And is it organized correctly? So, you know that a lot of the softwares on the markets have a very similar function. I'm comfortable with most of them. And they all have slightly different features, but basically they all work. And the problem is, or the challenge is for us to get our act together with data.
I agree. I think that's a great answer and very diplomatically put of you to not alienate one vendor over another, Geoff.
Dodge the bullet.
Dodge that bullet, sir. Yes. And the reason why I'm laughing and I'm saying that Geoff is dodging the bullet is because from Geoff's point of view, as well as the AWP University, we are technology agnostic, meaning we work with anybody in the industry and any software. So neither of us, you'll hear us speaking of one or the other publicly as one or better than the other, because we're partnered with them. So great question though. That is very true. Data to feed them is the key. So we've got 3 questions here in the last 2 minutes that we can wrap kind of into one, which is some basic housekeeping here, Geoff. So you've kind of already shown us where you can buy the book. We discussed it. It's on Amazon. You can just search "Schedule for Sale" or Geoff Ryan on Amazon, and up will come the book. Great tool, great guide for project learning. Geoff, will the slides that you've presented be available post-presentation? Excellent.
Yes.
So Geoff will send us a PDF of those slides, and we will distribute a thank you note post-webinar to everyone with all of the slides and information, and also a link to rewatch the video, because this is fully recorded, so that you could share it with others if you wish as well. Okay, and then finally, how does a company get started out with the data warehouse, Geoff? Like, what do you think the first thing a company should do to get onto this path of an intelligent data warehouse?
You know that one of our great challenges in the business is organizational change. You know that we know what to do and how to do it. And I know, Robin, you know exactly, if you had your way and the authority on a project, you could make that project hum. And basically everybody in this call is the same thing. The hard thing for us is getting permission to do it, and of course, getting a company on board with the idea that we need to go there. But if you look at any organizational change or the science of organizational change, the very first question is why. That's always the first question people ask when you talk about change. So my suggestion, how does a company get started with the data warehouse, is why are you going down this road? You know, what's wrong with the existing model, and of course, you know, what do you want it to look like in the future? You may see that, you know, we changed our logo a little bit here recently, and we popped in the phrase underneath it that the future is smart. One of the things we want to look at is, or we want people to think about is, okay, so we're doing business this way today, but is that going to be okay in the future? And of course, it's not. You know, we need to get smarter. We need to get, we need to have a digital program that relies on data to make informed decisions. So, so to answer this question, I would say, first of all, answer that question. You know, why do you want to go down this road? There's probably something around that. Hey, we want to get smarter, we want to keep with the industry, we want to lead the industry. You know, we want to be good at what we do. We want to be more effective. You know, get that list going, and then get the company on board with, this is what we want. This is what we have to do, because the current situation is not going to work in the future. Okay, so that's the very first step. If you just answer that, answer it well, get everybody on board with the correct answer, now you're getting down that road. Now, to actually take the first step and get into the data warehouse, of course, I would, you know, call a consultant, help let them help you with the nuts and bolts of how this is going to work. But ultimately, it will only work if it's in an environment that wants change. That's really, really, really important.
Excellent. Thank you, Geoff. And so with that, we'll end the questions in the formal segment. But as you can see, just as you were speaking there, nobody wanted to let you go, Geoff. It appears there's quite a few more questions that have come in. So if you're willing, we'd love to do some overtime after, but we're going to close the main part of the webinar here shortly. So what we'll do is we'll go through the finals of it, and then we'll come back to Geoff. So don't go anywhere, Geoff, and don't go anywhere, any of you, because we will come back and answer some questions. If you've got a hard stop, we'll end the basics of it here, but then we'll come back and have a general discussion beyond that. So first off, thank you very much, Geoff, for your presentations today. To look for Geoff, scan this QR code, go to his website, go to the company website, you know, sign up for a consultation, and start the discussion with Geoff as a highly skilled consultant and supplier. So again, thank you very much, Geoff, for the presentation. If you want to learn more about AWP, we have some extremely intelligent people. Sean Pellegrino is going to be teaching AWP fundamentals with myself on May 1st and 2nd. Sean, if you don't know, was one of the founding fathers of AWP and actually the chair of the research group that developed AWP to start with. So that'd be talking with one of the original personnel. Myself, I'm going to be delivering AWP for engineering. These are all certification courses of 16 hours over 2 days on May 8th and 9th. And then my good friend and highly skilled colleague, Keith Henson, with PTAG is going to be giving us a workplace planning fundamentals certification course on the 24th and 25th. Scan any of these QR codes. The QR codes will also be in the supplied information after, so you can scan them then. It'll take you direct to the site to sign up and get involved in those classes that are coming. They're a great opportunity. Generally, we offer these as e-learning online. These courses, same materials taught by true pillars in the industry. You can't go wrong with that. All right, our next webinar, we're extremely pleased to have Mr. Ted Blackman from Jovian Ventures. He's going to be joining us in our next webinar, which is April 19th. Ted always has an immense amount of knowledge, having been in AWP since long before it was AWP, and his time with NASA, having leveraged technology into the environment of construction and helping to bring technology into construction, kicking and screaming. He's got a long history in AWP, and it'll be a very, very interesting presentation. So we're thrilled to have Ted Blackman in our next session. So with that, there is a survey. This survey will be live, and you can fill out the survey after. Please give us some basic information, everything from how you enjoyed the session to who you'd like us to possibly bring in as future guests. So with that, please take the time to spend in the app and go through that. So I thank you. This will pretty much conclude the formal aspect of our presentation for today, but don't go anywhere unless you absolutely have to, because we're going to do a little bit of overtime here with Geoff. He was so gracious as to manage to stick around for a couple minutes. So I thank you very much for that, Geoff, and thank you all for joining us that have to leave. Please look for the email coming from the AWP University, the thank you. It'll have the links to be able to watch it, as well as share it internally so that you can continue to watch this. It's not a one and gone. You can feel free to watch the videos after, as well as sign up for future webinars, and all of the information on how to get a hold of either myself and the AWP University or our guest, Geoff Ryan, will be in those transmittals. So take a look for those emails and get in contact with us. But let's take a jump back, and we're going to go back in these slides, and we're going to go back to those questions. And I thank you all that had to leave, and let's continue on in an informal question and answer, Geoff. So let's take a look at the first one that's coming up here. So to adopt AWP methodologies, what are the main changes owners need to make on current conventional contracting structure? Interesting. What do you think?
One of the important changes that we talked about a little bit earlier was that the owner needs to be in the business of project management. So that's really important, that that there's only one group that really cares about the whole project, and that is the owner. So the first answer is the owner has to be engaged here and has to own this process. And ultimately, of course, as the owner, you want to own all this data afterwards anyway. Now, obviously, in contracts have to spell out that data is a deliverable, and it's a digital deliverable. So I guess the way that we have addressed that before is to build a information management procedure that says, okay, this is how we manage data, this is how we need to receive it, and then in the contract just basically add the procedure. So there's a little bit of contract language that says, please comply with the procedure. Here's a copy of it, and now you've got a standard request for all data suppliers.
Okay, excellent. And I think that's the key when it comes to contracts. I always say good paper makes good friends. And in order to make sure that you've got good paper, you have to identify from a data point of view everything that you're requiring from those suppliers. Just to give a quick anecdote, actually, I think, Geoff, you and I were working on this project together at the time. It was a project just outside of Edmonton where there was a request of a steel fabricator to supply the piece mark data for a project that we were working on. The steel supplier said, yes, that's not a problem. However, it was not part of the contract. So for us to be able to supply that data, it's going to be a $60,000 bill for us to go back and produce the data. That's a situation where literally the contractor was holding the client hostage by saying that it's going to be $60,000 for us to hit save and transmit to you. So that could have been really easily alleviated had it been mentioned what the delivery methodology for that data needed to be within the contract. So saving yourself, we all know about change orders and all those types of things within construction as being where a lot of contractors make their money. They are very astute on supply of data also. If that data is not listed in contract, they'll charge you for it later. So get it into your contracts, follow those data standards from AWP for AWP from CII, and get them into your contracts will be key to have a successful project that's not going to get nickel and dimed later. All right, thanks, Geoff. Okay, next one. Have you had pushback from the engineering and construction contractors to supply the data? Oh my God. What do you think?
Is there anybody on the call that doesn't know the answer to this? Yes.
Yeah, well, we all know the answer is a big yes, but tell us some stories about it, Geoff.
Okay, so you know that resistance comes from a lack of understanding or a lack of preparation. You know, if you're having these conversations up front and you have it in the contract, you talk to the end users about how it's going to help them make decisions and understand their own situations, and you demonstrate to them this is how it's going to benefit your day-to-day activities, and of course, you know, ultimately helps the contractors make more profit. When you demonstrate that and you explain it to them and you tell them that, hey, this is for our benefit, eventually they get on board. Now, nobody trusts us, of course. So when you're first giving them your data, it's a bit like, you know, you're showing their dirty laundry and nobody likes that. But you know what? That's the way to get it resolved as well. And so yes, absolutely, you're going to get resistance. But I mean, that's basically resistance to change. And maybe it's because you haven't answered that fundamental question of why are we changing? So maybe start there. Why are we doing this? Why, you know, and of course, for contractors, you also need to answer the question of what's in it for me. So everybody wants to have that question answered. What do engineering get out of it if they give you all that data? What's the benefit to them? So, and the same as contractors. So if you can address those 2 points, why we're doing it and how they're going to benefit from it, that will make that a lot simpler for you.
Right. And I think the other key when dealing with construction contractors and their data is ensuring that their proprietary data will not be used or is not obvious to others, because that's usually the biggest concern. They're happy to give you project data, but they don't want the rates and rules and those types of things shown to even just the owner they're working for. So ensuring that there is data that's required and data that's not required, drawing that line in the sand so that they understand. And that kind of goes back to the last question too, which is making sure it's clear, concise, and in the contracts. And making sure that they know that proprietary data will not be used from the contractor. It's just project data. So,
yeah.
All right. How long do you think it will be before all data in the field is digital? Are we getting close to having no paper out there? You touched on it a little bit, right? When you said that the guys out there, and ladies out there, they're using iPads at home now. You know, gone are the old curmudgeons that I need that paper to take notes on. You know, they're retiring, moving on into the more digital age, right? So what's your thoughts?
So I know that well, the project, one of our projects had 500 iPads issued to the field. So we're certainly there on a lot of these projects. But I think of it like our transition. Everybody on this call, everybody's transition from a newspaper to the phone.
For more information, visit our website at ccteglobal.com.
Get a newspaper on a Sunday morning, sit out on the deck, have a cup of coffee, and just enjoy the experience. You could just read the paper. It was a nice, peaceful time. Well, now we don't get our news that way anymore. Now you get it, you know, there's pings on your phone and it comes to you instantly. And there's not too many times that we actually get to read newspapers. Well, that same transition is what the field's going through. You know, that they've had paper, they like paper, but once you show them an iPad, they can tell them way more than that paper ever did. You know, they're good. They will go there. But of course, you've got to support that with easy access to good quality data. And yes, we're already there. You know, you're already there. Look at your look at the phone in your pocket. Is the world of information right there.
So follow up from me on that, Geoff. Normally when I'm having this conversation, very good answer, very astute on the movement into technology, but generally what's the first thing somebody will throw back at you? What about intrinsically safe? What's your thoughts on that, and where are we going? You mentioned you've deployed a bunch of tablets to the field. How's that intrinsically safe aspect been handled?
So you can get tablets that are intrinsically safe, and of course, in a really dangerous environment, maybe you want to stay with paper. We haven't came across that yet, but yeah, that maybe that is a consideration for 2% or 5% of the work we're going to do. Which brings me to another small subject, and that is, that when we are making change, we do seem to get focused on the 2% of problems, not the 98% that would benefit from it. And this might be a good example of that. That 98% of projects are not going to have a problem with either supplying intrinsically safe iPads or having iPads in the field.
Right. Excellent answer. And I would think that the other thing to look at there is the policy as far as why is it required to be intrinsically safe? What is the situation and what is the guidelines there? Because one thing that I found personally is that when we deal with an intrinsically safe situation, sometimes there's multiple levels of requirement, and often it's just as simple as don't charge the unit while you're in the field, because that actual plugging of the charger into the unit could cause a spark. So that's policy. You put that policy in, that it's in place, then the case stays closed. A lot of people throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, oh, it's intrinsically safe, this isn't done. Well, there is varying levels of examine what that looks like, and examine if it's needed. Paper's not replaced, paper has its place, but figure out where it is. My caution with continuing with paper, and I agree it should be replaced, is often in a construction site the paper's outdated the day it's printed.
It is uncontrolled.
Staying digital keeps you up to date and eliminates that rework aspect, right? All right, Geoff, do you know of any if anyone has developed a procedure or checklist for setting up and implementing the data warehouse system?
Oh, great question. We have, and COI, of course, has a checklist or a scorecard, of course, that checks off fundamentals of processes that would lead to a data warehouse. But as far as I know, there isn't a checklist for setting it up. So maybe that's a place we should go. Is once we get good at this, is to have a checklist of things that we do. So great question. Thanks, Preston.
Yes, excellent. Thank you. Talk about the need for consistent asset tagging. Question coming to us from Fish. Thank you, Fish.
Yes. So this is one of the rules of data management, of course, is we have to have standard conventions on what we call things. And of course, tagging, asset tagging is one of those things. It has to make sense. But beyond that, of course, we can also manage that by saying, okay, so if we don't get it tagged, well, we're going to tag it because we know the value of making it tagged. So we can manage that. We absolutely 100% need it. Everything has to be tagged and it has to make sense because it has to live in a digital environment. Now, we didn't talk too much about the digital twin today, but the digital twin is going to be real in a very short period of time. So we're talking to folks that are building offshore oil rigs. Well, one of the things that goes on with offshore oil rigs is we don't want people out there. Now, the only way you can operate an offshore oil rig and not have people there is to have a digital twin that they operate from land. So, we're talking to other organizations that are automating warehouses and things. They're talking about working in the dark. Well, that's great, but the same idea that they're going to need a digital twin in order to do that. We're only going to get there by having standard tagging requirements for components and having standard naming conventions so that we can use this 3D environment after construction. And that's a whole other webinar, I believe.
Yeah.
Great question.
Agreed. Yeah, and I think I agree with you. The biggest thing when everything that Geoff has talked about here when it comes to data management, it all hinges on the consistency of tagging. And anybody who's taken any of my classes knows that I hound people on their data nomenclature and in making sure that they follow through on their nomenclature and start with one and don't change it. Everybody's got a great idea about how we should change the nomenclature through the project. You want to see a project get killed or have massive internal problems, change your nomenclature halfway through and see what happens. It's make a big problem. So maintaining that, picking it, making it intelligent, key to any data structure for certain. All right. Hi, Geoff. Great talk. So are you currently supporting projects with AWP services, and what industries are adopting AWP at the quickest pace? Tell Nick I said hi.
Nick? Yeah, Robert says hi. Okay.
Well, I assume it's coming from Robert. I was just reading it.
Yeah. Hey, so yes, we are, and I would say a wide variety of industries. And one of the things that we have learned, and we're learning, and a lot of people on this call already understand, is we're talking to people who are building apartment buildings. We're talking to people who are building warehouses. We're talking to people who are building nuclear power facilities, and everybody in between. And you know what? Construction inherently has the same problems, and those problems are basically alignment of stuff we need in the right place at the right time, and that if a project's small enough, you can get all that information in your head and you can manage it. But often enough, as soon as complexity comes into any project, then you need a data management system in order to go there and to be able to manage that. So I've always professed that you can use AWP in your garage on the weekend. That if you want to make good use of your time, if you've only got 2 days off this week and you have to get a lot of work done on the weekend for a project, then you should be building a material list on Tuesday or Wednesday, and you should be picking up the material on Thursday, and you should have a plan in place by Friday so that when you hit the ground, you're ready. That's AWP in a nutshell. That information and data management is just what we use when all of those pieces become so complex that you can't get them in your head. So yes, all construction industries are moving towards this model, and I think who's adapting it quickest are the ones that are hurting the most, because they see the huge benefit in this, and of course they're the ones that are looking for answers quickest.
Excellent. I think to add my 2 cents to it, the one group that, obviously the construction sector, as you're mentioning, is well into adopting. The one that's surprising and that we've often considered as an outlier, yet it really fits this particular presentation, is that one group that we see really adopting AWP is data warehouses. Amazon, Microsoft, they're all spending a massive amount of money building infrastructure as fast as they can to store all this data that we're talking about. And guess what? They've all seen the light and they're starting to use AWP for those methodologies. I think that's very key. When you see massive projects that need to be done very, very quickly, and AWP is the tool of choice by these very large companies, the largest companies in the world, I think that in itself tells a big tale, right? So, how do we overcome construction based on material availability? Many of times IWPs are released without material 100% availability. Oh my God, who's releasing IWPs that aren't 100%? Sorry, I'll let you answer that, Geoff.
Yeah, so how do we overcome construction based on material availability? And you know, that is essentially when we go to a project and we haven't performed AWP, which means that we haven't organized engineering and procurement, then that's basically how we live. You know, what material do I have? It shows me what work fronts I can address. So I don't think that's ever going away. Sorry, the second part of that question was.
Sorry, I deleted it a little prematurely there. But.
Okay, so it was also talking about materials, and it was talking about
releasing IWPs to the field that weren't 100%.
Okay, thank you. Yes. So, well, basically, that's just a discipline thing where you know that you have to support your workforce planners so that they don't do that. So when I see IWPs being released to the field that aren't material constrained, that tells me that it's really hard for the planners to check to see that they've got the material. So you haven't got a data infrastructure that tells them, okay, yes, we've got this, or no, we haven't. Or you don't have enough planners and they're scrambling to try to build packages and they don't have time to check materials. But in the ideal situation or the scenario, you have your materials tied to your work packaging software and you can tell what material you've got. And if you know that you don't have a piece of material, then you don't put it in a plan. Right? So, and of course that you have to give the planners or the workforce planners room to be able to make those decisions. But then of course also you need to manage that environment so that you are checking with the planners to say, okay, prove to me that we have this material, therefore, you know, we can release it to the field. So the other measurement, I guess, of whether that is happening or not, and our key measurement, you know, of all the things we do and all the stuff that we measure, our key measurement is, do IWPs close on time? And if IWPs close on time, that means that somebody checked the material. So if you just monitor that and understand, hey, are we putting out good quality IWPs? And the answer is no, then of course the next question is, well, why not? And that would probably raise the fact that, well, we didn't have the material. We got the package, but we didn't have the material. Well, you know, that's telling you a lot there. So anyway, very common that we don't check material because we don't have enough planners or we don't have our system set up to tell the planner what material they do have.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much. So down to pretty much the last question, and then a lot of congratulations for a great presentation. So what in your experience with projects that are doing, or what is your experience with projects that are doing AWP without a data warehouse?
Well, that's every project that we worked on before now. Well, before the last 5 years, I guess. So of course the problem is you have to figure out where data is. You have to figure out how to get it. You have to interpret it, and then you have to figure out is this data current? Is it real? Is it the right data? And you know, I always go back to project controls group that I was working with that would start with the answer. So project management team would say, we need to earn 2% this month. They'd start with that answer and then they'd work their way backwards to prove that we earn 2%. Well, you know, you don't want to live in that world, right? You don't want to live in that world where basically we're not relying on good quality data to tell us reality. So that's the problem for living in an environment that doesn't have a data warehouse, is we don't trust the data. You can't trust it. Have a look at any app on your phone. This is the simple proof that this is what we should be doing. Any app on your phone does exactly what we just talked about. It basically goes to a pool of data, and it pulls data, and it tells you something, or pulls it into a consumable format so that you are informed. So imagine if you couldn't trust that information. imagine if you looked up the hockey score, but you couldn't trust it because you weren't sure if somebody was manipulating the data behind the scenes. That would only happen once, and you'd never pull on that app again. Well, that's what was happening to us for 20 years. We couldn't trust the data that we had on projects. So, the sad part is we sort of got used to that and we got comfortable with it. But now, of course, what we can do with the data warehouse is we can get beyond that. We can actually have data that is meaningful and trustworthy. And that's a different place, but a very comfortable place to be.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much, Geoff. Let me see. That's last couple questions. Everybody's congratulating you on a great presentation, and I thank you as well. We got Max and Dario on the screen that have mentioned how great the presentation was. So thank you again, Geoff, and thank you for the overtime. It's 25 minutes of overtime above and beyond. I thank you for that. And I thank you those that stuck with us. Looks like just over half of the registrants stuck with us over the overtime. So that really says something. Thank you, Geoff.
Okay, I'd like to thank you as well, Robin, and your organization for doing this, because it's a great platform. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, our whole focus here is to give people like you a intelligent place to answer questions and do these types of presentations, so that the industry has a place to come and talk to us. Those that may have been there, done that. The experienced answer over the textbook answer is often a much better place to get that knowledge. So I thank you, Geoff, and I thank you all for sticking with us. Look out for the email that's going to be coming on both the next sessions as well as the information for this session, which will be complete with Geoff's slides. It will also contain linkages for you to watch the recording. We do not close the webinar recording viewing for some time after. So any external personnel that you wish, you can send the link, and they can also register and watch the recording, so that Geoff's thoughts can proliferate through in the industry. And as Geoff mentioned, next week, many of us, including myself, will be in San Diego for the AWP Tech Conference. It was no mistake that we were talking about data just before the AWP Tech Conference. So I hope to see many of you there. Geoff will have multiple staff on site. I will also be there at the conference. I have a booth and we'll be displaying. So if you happen to be joining us there, please come look me up, come to my booth. Let's have a great conversation and look at how we can possibly help you with training in AWP with the university. Till then, till the next one, thank you very much. And this will conclude our session for today. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. For more information, visit our website at ccteglobal.com.